We're going to get started in 1 minute. Go ahead.
The April 27th, 2021 special meeting of the Monroe County Legislature will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Alcoffer?
Here.
Mr. Alcoffer is present. Mr. Ansello?
Here.
Mr. Ansello is present. Ms. Barnhart?
Here.
Ms. Barnhart is present. Mr. Baroth is excused. Mr. Baines?
Present.
Mr. Baines is present. Ms. Boyce?
Present.
Ms. Boyce is present. Mr. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Brew is present. President Carbone?
Here.
President Carbone is present. Mr. Colby?
Here.
Mr. Colby is present. Mr. Delahanty?
Here.
Mr. Delahanty is present. Mrs. DeFlorio?
Here.
Mrs. DeFlorio is present. Mr. Dondorfer?
Here.
Mr. Dondorfer is present. Mr. Felder?
Here.
Mr. Felder is present. Mr. Flagler Mitchell?
Card for you.
Here.
You're all set. Your card is activated and ready for use. Please sign.
Ms. Hasman?
Here.
Ms. Hasman is present. Mr. Hebert?
Here.
Mr. Hebert is present. Mr. Keophit-Lassie?
Here.
Mr. Keophit-Lassie is present. Ms. Lamar?
Here.
Ms. Lamar is present. Mr. Lee?
Here.
Mr. Lee is present. Mr. Mafucci?
Here.
Mr. Mafucci is present. Mr. Marinetti?
Here.
Mr. Marinetti is present. Mr. Morelli?
Here.
Mr. Morelli is present. Ms. Roman?
Here.
Ms. Roman is present. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Smith is present. Ms. Taylor?
Here.
Ms. Taylor is present. Mr. Terp?
Here.
Mr. Terp is present. Mr. Wilcox?
Here.
Mr. Wilcox is present. Mr. Wilt?
Here.
Mr. Wilt is present. Mr. Udelson?
Here.
Mr. Udelson is present.
Thank you. We will need to suspend the rules of the legislature for the purpose of prohibiting public in-person attendance in accordance with Executive Order 202.1, which was extended through May 25th by Executive Order 202.103. You have a motion before you, which is moved by Legislator Brew and seconded by Legislator DeFlorio. This is a non-debatable motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Please join me in a moment of silent prayer. Please stand as Legislator Jackie Smith will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Legislator?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Legislator Smith. I called this special meeting of the legislature pursuant to the authority vested in me as the president of the Monroe County Legislature by Section C2-9C1 of the County Charter and Section 545-5 of the Rules of the Legislature of the County of Monroe. This meeting has been closed to the public, and all legislators are participating via teleconference in accordance with Executive Order 202.1 and 202.103. In keeping with the legislature's tradition of openness, the meeting is being live streamed on the YouTube through the legislature's official channel. Everyone participating via video or teleconference will please mute their devices except to obtain the floor or cast a vote. If seeking to obtain the floor, please simply state your name and wait for me to call on you before proceeding with your question or statement. The clerk will read the full title of each resolution and referral to avoid any confusion as to which item is before the legislature. All votes will be held via voice vote unless a roll call is requested. Tonight we'll consider a motion to convene a committee of the whole. In convening the committee of the whole, we will also discharge those items currently referred to the committee and commit them to the committee of the whole. All legislators will be members of the committee of the whole and able to participate in debate and vote on items regardless of their respective committee assignments or which committee the referral was initially assigned. The committee of the whole will govern by the same rules of the legislature that govern committee meetings, and the votes taken are equivalent to those taken in committee. Meeting items passed by the committee of the whole will be considered for final approval or appropriate action at the next regularly scheduled meeting of the legislature. We will now hold the public forum. Mr. Clerk.
No one is registered to address the legislature, nor were any written comments submitted.
We will now proceed with the consideration of motions, resolutions, and notices. Will the clerk read the next item on the agenda?
Motion to discharge, convene, and commit, providing that file numbers 21-0125, 21-0130 through 21-0156, and 21-0163 be discharged from the agenda charter, public safety, intergovernmental relations, planning and economic development, transportation, human services, environment and public works, and ways and means committees, providing that the legislature convene a committee of the whole, providing that file numbers 21-0125, 21-0130 through 21-0156, and 21-0163 be committed to the committee of the whole.
Moved by Legislator Brew, seconded by Legislator DeFlorio. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. At this time, we will recess the April 27, 2021 special meeting of the Monroe County Legislature, and we'll convene the committee of the whole. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Alcoffer.
Here.
Mr. Alcoffer is present. Mr. Ansello.
Here.
Mr. Ansello is present. Ms. Barnhart.
Here.
Ms. Barnhart is present. Mr. Baroff is excused. Mr. Baines.
Present.
Mr. Baines is present. Ms. Boyce.
Present.
Ms. Boyce is present. Mr. Brew.
Here.
Mr. Brew is present. President Carbone.
Here.
President Carbone is present. Mr. Colby.
Here.
Mr. Colby is present. Mr. Delahanty.
Here.
Mr. Delahanty is present. Mrs. DeFlorio.
Here.
Mrs. DeFlorio is present. Mr. Dondorfer.
Here.
Mr. Dondorfer.
Is
Mr.
here.
Dondorfer is present. Mr. Felder.
Here.
Mr. Felder is present. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell is present. Ms. Hasman.
Here.
Ms. Hasman is present. Mr. Hebert.
Here.
Mr. Hebert is present. Mr. Keophit-Lassie.
Here.
Mr. Keophit-Lassie is present. Ms. Lamar.
Here.
Ms. Lamar is present. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Lee is present. Mr. Mafucci.
Here.
Mr. Mafucci is present. Mr. Marinetti.
Here.
Mr. Marinetti is present. Mr. Morelli.
Here.
Mr. Morelli is present. Ms. Roman?
Here.
Ms. Roman is present. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Smith is present. Ms. Taylor?
Here.
Ms. Taylor is present. Mr. Turp?
Here.
Mr. Turp is present. Mr. Wilcox?
Here.
Mr. Wilcox is present. Mr. Wilt?
Here.
Mr. Wilt is present. Mr. Udelson?
Here.
Mr. Udelson is present.
The next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. You have the minutes from March 23rd, 2021, meeting of the Committee of the Whole before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. We will now hold the public forum. Mr. Clerk.
There are no comments this evening.
We will now proceed with new business. Will the clerk read the next item on the agenda?
Item number 1, referral 21-0125, enacting a local law requiring motorists to provide a minimum of 3 feet of space when passing a bicycle rider.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Taylor, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Legislator Barnhart.
Legislator Taylor moved it and Delahanty seconded it. Legislator Barnhart, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Carbone. I would just like to thank all of my colleagues, especially Legislator Jackie Smith, for signing on to this legislation named for Carrie Ray. This bill is important because it clarifies for the public what is a safe distance to pass cyclists, a minimum of 3 feet. Importantly, this bill does not create new fines, fees, or tickets. It just clarifies an existing law. So I just want to thank everyone for supporting this legislation to make the county a safer place for cyclists, whether they're riding to work, for recreation, or for exercise. Thank you.
Legislator Smith.
Correction. I'm sorry, Legislator Smith moved that, and it was seconded by Legislator Delahanty. That was my mistake.
And Legislator Barnhart, I believe, was on that too.
And Legislator Barnhart. Legislator Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to take a moment to say a few words, not only about the importance of vehicle safety around cyclists, but also about how this legislation originated. From 2018 to 19, New York State records indicate that 321 cyclists were injured in accidents involving motor vehicles. These accidents are often due to the lack of a safe passing distance between passing cars and cyclists who are sharing the road. Tragically, one of the lives lost in such a collision was a teacher, Carrie Ray, from the town of Clarkson, which is in my legislative district. This local law will provide motorists and law enforcement with an established distance of what is required when passing a cyclist in a motor vehicle. 33 states already have the 3-foot minimum passing distance law in the books. Recently in New York, Suffolk County passed a nearly identical law to the one before you today, recognizing the need for a clear standard to be set to ensure cyclists are safe. Carrie Ray was a loving wife, hockey mom, beloved second grade school teacher, friend to many within the community. She was passionate about physical fitness as illustrated by her love for cycling. In passing this local law, Carrie's memory will be honored, bring awareness to how dangerous the road can be for cyclists and pedestrians, and ensure that we have a standardized enforcement protocol for motorists when passing those we share the road with. Thank you for considering this local law, and I look forward to having it passed during our May legislative meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 2, referral 21-0130, acceptance of a grant from the Federal Aviation Administration Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act Grant Program related to the operation and maintenance of the Frederick Douglass Greater Rochester International Airport.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 3, referral 21-0131, enact a local law establishing a sustainable energy loan program, Open CPACE, in Monroe County and authorize a contract with Energy Improvement Corporation to administer the Energize New York Open CPACE program.
Somebody like to move this? Legislator Taylor?
Legislator Dondorfer, I'll move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Dondorfer,
I'll
seconded by
second. Roman.
legislator Roman, second. Legislator Delahanty, second. Anyone else?
Okay.
Any
Mr.
discussion on?
President? Yeah, Legislator Udelson.
Yes, Legislator Udelson, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I'm pleased to join the county executive in making this referral to the legislature to implement the Open CPACE program. This program, CPACE stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy, provides a low-cost alternative to traditional loans for both not-for-profit and commercial building owners to make energy upgrades to their buildings. There's no financial or administrative responsibility for the county, although the legislature is required to authorize it. And I also wanted to mention that this recommendation comes from the county's Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee, which I'm honored to co-chair. I want to thank all the members of the committee, which includes my colleagues, Legislator Boyce and Legislator Ansello. Thank you.
Mr. President, Legislator Brew.
Legislator Brew, you have the floor.
Yes, through the president, thank you to the county executive and Legislator Udelson for bringing this before us today. While the intent of this legislation is certainly something that is bipartisan, I know I speak for several of our colleagues that questions remain to be answered. Monroe County has proven itself to be a leader in environmental sustainability and protection. From LEED certified county buildings and vehicles to the county's renowned eco park to solar initiatives around our community, we have consistently remained ahead of the curve. Early last year, this honorable body created the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee. The purpose of this committee is to ensure that Monroe County adopts a complete plan and approach to improving sustainability. I believe this initiative may be a valuable part of the Climate Action Plan and warrants consideration by the advisory board. Therefore, in order to ensure this is the best fit Monroe County, and that if appropriate, it would be included in the Climate Action Plan, which will be presented to this honorable body. I ask that this item be referred to the Climate Action Advisory Board for recommendation on action. Thank you, Mr. President.
Legislator Udelson.
Legislator Udelson?
I'm a little confused by the majority leader's comments. This did come from the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee. It was sent with a request to be introduced back in, I believe it was January. And the point that Legislator Brew made about it being part of the overall recommendation of the committee, although I don't disagree with that sentiment. At the time, we had indicated that the problem is that that recommendation and implementation of eventually adopted plan is still several months away, probably at least to the end of the year. And meanwhile, there are companies, both not-for-profit and commercial, that could be, making the use of this, taking advantage of the program. And so we thought it was appropriate, and that's why it was then referred to the administration. So I understand the sentiment, but would ask this honorable body to consider the circumstances and approve it at this point.
Yeah. Mr. President, Legislator Brew, do I have the floor, Mr. President?
Yes, you do.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. The referral did not state anywhere that this was a product of the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee, unless I'm mistaken somewhere along the line, right? That was really the basis of what was driving my comments here, Legislator Udelson. And the other thing that, not that it would ultimately affect the passage of this honorable body, but it is utilizing an LDC, and an LDC still remains to leave a little bit of a pit in my stomach, even though this LDC was created by the state of New York. It is in fact still an LDC. Yes, and I do recognize the benefit that LDCs do bring to the table in terms of being able to, enhance the way local government does business. But nevertheless, I need to state that, I did have a certain extent of angst in reading the referral. So I guess to summarize, it was not information that I was made aware of that this was in fact a product of the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee.
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to either the administration or the co-sponsor, Legislator Udelson. Could you tell me what other upstate counties have implemented or adopted similar or identical programs?
Yes, through you, Mr. President, this is Mike Garland from DES. As the referral states, there are 61 members. There are approximately 25 counties. Erie County has adopted the local law. Albany County. I know you asked specifically for upstate counties. Niagara County has, Wyoming, Yates counties have as well. City of Syracuse, City of Rochester, and City of Buffalo, City of Canandaigua, just to name a few.
Thank you, Mr. Garland. Through you, Mr. President, who provides the capital to support these loans?
Through you, Mr. President, these are private companies that are qualified to provide financing. Again, this is through private capital to commercial and nonprofit building owners, specifically for energy upgrades. This would not be available to municipal building owners.
So if I understand you correctly, through you, Mr. President, the organization that is going to implement these energy changes provides the financing?
Through you, Mr. President, there are a number of capital providers that are, again, pre-approved, that if there was a company that was interested in having this work done, they would work through the Energy Improvement Corporation. They would also, the building owner would work to solicit contractors to make those improvements. Again, they have to meet standards, state standards through NYSERDA to have those improvements made. But again, there are a number of pre-qualified capital providers that a prospective building owner could utilize.
Through you, Mr. President, are these private capital providers willing to provide an unlimited number of funds, or is there, do we face potential that early people into the program get the funding and people that are a little later to the program don't get the funding?
Through you, Mr. President, there are a number of agencies or private capital providers. I haven't seen a situation where a project has not been funded. Again, it's financing up to 100% of the project cost. It can be combined with other financing. It's obviously competitive. It's intended to be competitive financing for them, but that transaction occurs outside the county, if you will. It does not go through the county. That's between the company, or I should say the building owner that intends to do the upgrades, and whichever private capital provider they secure a loan with.
Oh, could we, through you, Mr. President, could we get a list of the private capital companies, please?
Through Mr. President, yes, we can provide that.
Through you, Mr. President, what happens, this program is being adopted, if I remember correctly, for 10 years with 2 potential 5-year extensions. What happens if somebody takes out a 30-year loan to the last 10 years of the program?
Through you, Mr. President, again, that there would be a lien on that property that would remain on that property and would transfer with the property if it were sold.
Through you, Mr. President, I'm not quite sure how to ask this, but I'm going to try. If this entity no longer exists in Monroe County, is the county exposed to any financial burdens if a loan goes beyond the existence of this program?
Through you, Mr. President,
excuse me, Mr. President. This is Jeff McCann. I believe we have somebody from the law department who can answer that.
This is Laura Smith, Chief Deputy County Attorney. Under this program, EIC, as the local development corporation, it will be acting as the county's agent to help private financiers secure loans, help developers secure loans through private financiers at very favorable rates. It's a 100% loan for energy improvement systems. That can be anything from upgrading windows in existing buildings or incorporating green infrastructure within a new construction build. EIC then will work with a developer applicant to match them with private financing. If the private financer and the developer come to an agreement and make a deal, what EIC then does is that they will file a lien on the property. So essentially the lien on the property is securing the loan. That's what provides such equitable financing or helpful financing for green infrastructure. So that's the role that the county and the EIC plays. Once the lien is filed, the lien is for the private financer, so the county's no longer involved at that point.
And when you, through you, Mr. President, when you say the county is no longer involved, you mean through this EIC LDC?
Correct. Once EIC files the lien on the property, the county's involvement would no longer be involved if the loan continued and ended up going in foreclosure. The county would not be the bringer of the foreclosure. It would be the private capital that's securing the lien.
Okay. You just answered a couple of my other questions. Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, could you give us I think you already gave us a couple of examples that would qualify for a CPACE loan, but could a complete, say, green roof qualify for one of these, such as what we have on one of the MCC building?
Through Mr. President, yes. There are a number of examples of projects across New York State that involve, solar and, other renewable energy type projects. A lot of adaptive reuse for, vacant buildings being transformed into mixed-use developments, hotels, apartments, things of that nature.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, have any Monroe County commercial property owners given us any indication they would utilize this type of a program and would support it?
Through you, Mr. President, yes, there are two developments that have expressed, two developments in Monroe County that have expressed interest in this program.
Are you at through you, Mr. President, are you at liberty to say who they are?
Yes, I believe so. The project that is under construction now, I believe scheduled to open in May, Mr. President, is Home 2 Suites in Greece on Bellwood Drive. And the other inquiry that was made relates to the development of the former, referred to as the Holiday Inn at the airport, 911 Brooks Avenue, that was procured, was obtained through foreclosure back in March of 2020. and they're evaluating this program's applicability for planned improvements there and redevelopment of that property.
Thank you, through you, Mr. President. It seemed you implied on this Home 2 Suites property that they are almost completing the project, so they can retroactively apply for financing to like replace existing financing, or how does that work?
Through Mr. President, yes, that is correct. They've been in touch with the Energy Improvement Corporation already. They've been in touch with a capital provider. They're very anxious to move forward on that.
Through you, Mr. President. So they have not they're not near completion of the project. They're near completion of like an application. I'm not sure which.
Through you, Mr. President, they are the project is nearly complete. It is anticipated to be open soon, is my understanding, and that they can retroactively apply for financing for the work that's been done.
Interesting. Sort of a follow-up on Legislator Brew's question. The community was very, through you, Mr. President, the community was very supportive of the actions taken by the previous administration to get rid of LDCs, which were continually plagued by issues and one might say corruption. Are there concerns about the county reconnecting itself with LDCs?
Mr. President, this is Jeff McCann. No, not at all. I was during my time in the town of Greece, I was the head of a local development corporation. It's my understanding that the town of Greece still has that local development corporation in place. These were tools that were created by state government to give governments greater flexibility to accomplish things easier in a more straightforward way. And, you know, to be very direct, I think that there have been individual abuses of LDCs in the county historically. I think those were tied to particular individuals and sort of the culture of the organization rather than an indictment of LDCs themselves.
Well, through you, Mr. President, as a follow-up question, it would seem that the ability to retroactively apply certainly opens the door to obvious opportunities for, let's call them backdoor deals, whatever you'd like to call them, illicit activity. Why am I wrong?
It's for meetings. It's for meetings.
Through you, Mr. President. Again, I think if somebody is looking to do something for improper or looking to commit illegal activities, I would think that would be possible, regardless of whether it was an LDC, a corporation, an LLC. Again, I think it's really more about the intent of the individuals involved. And I would point out that this is the town of Bedford's LDC, and again, this is something that's used by entities wide. And to our knowledge, there's not been any issues at all with the management of that particular LDC. But again, I would say LDCs in general aren't a bad thing, and because we've had bad experience in past administrations, I don't think it's our position that that wouldn't prohibit us from taking advantage of them. Particularly in this case, they're the only vehicle that are option to adopt this particular program, which will provide benefits to businesses and the environment.
Thank you. Through Mr. President, I'm kind of looking to see if what kind of a usage we expect for this program, and Mr. Garland already named a couple of programs that are looking at it. Do we have any idea on anticipated amount of loans and quantity and dollar size over the course of a year? Or here.
Yeah, through you, Mr. President. Based on the scope and scale and magnitude of some of the other projects completed across New York State, I've seen some in the neighborhood of about $500,000 up to close to $10 million of financing. And that particular project is one maybe you've seen. It's in Syracuse. It's a very prominent historic hotel, and they utilize a PACE financing in Syracuse for that part of that renovation.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, is it correct that am I correct if I state that the county has no financial liability for these loans at any point in time from their inception, from their concept to their inception to their conclusion?
Through you, Mr. President, that is correct.
Okay.
Mr. President, Legislator Brew.
Are you through, Legislator Hebert?
I'm just checking my last two notes. Give me 1 second, please. Through you, Mr. President, I do have at least one more question. Has any, I believe the city of Rochester already has one of these programs in place. Was any considered, and the administration has been very aggressive in working with the city. Has there been any consideration of joining these two programs if it's possible? And if so, what are the negatives and positives?
Through you, Mr. President, the city became a member in March of this year. They would be responsible for projects within their taxing jurisdiction. The county can only offer the program to interested developers outside the city, but within the county's jurisdiction. So in many respects, they would complement one another. This certainly would be another tool in the toolbox for planning and economic development in the county to offer, companies looking to, say, relocate here, or others that want to stay here but need to undertake renovations. So again, I think by having both the city and the county having this offering available is advantageous.
And last question, I promise, Mr. President, through you, has the Climate Action Advisory Committee provide any estimates, or do they have any guesses on what the long-term program, improvements, capabilities will be coming out of adopting this?
Through you, Mr. President, no, the advisory committee did not perform that level of analysis, but in our work with the representatives from the Energy Improvement Corporation, these improvements do need to meet NYSERDA standards and obviously need to demonstrate the energy savings and the energy benefits associated with the projects themselves.
All right, thank you. I yield the floor, Mr. President.
Legislator Brew.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, to the administration. Just a few more questions, if I may. How many projects would you consider that there would be at the current level of shovel ready to take advantage of this program?
Through you, Mr. President, I don't have that information available, only because it's really within, within private sector, right? How many projects might be out there that would be willing to take advantage of that? I think there would be active interest certainly here in the community, and there may be projects that have been teed up or, as you said, shovel ready, both in the not-for-profit world and in the private development world.
Okay, and to the president, to the administration. So, I was assuming that this could also be applied to county buildings. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. President, no. This is only for privately owned buildings and buildings owned by not-for-profits.
Okay, understand.
Legislator Mafucci, when Mr. Brew was...
I don't think, Legislator Brew, are you through?
Yes, if you could come back to me after Legislator Mafucci's question, I would appreciate that.
Okay, Legislator Mafucci.
Thank you, Legislator Brew, for allowing me to ask this question. Through the president to Mr. Garland, are you supportive of this initiative and why?
Through you, Mr. President, thank you for that question. Yes, I am. Myself and Director Franklin have looked at this program over, I would say, the last decade under a number of different iterations of the development of this program. And we believe at this point in time, the program provides maximum benefit to the community with minimal, if not nominal, or no risk to the county. It also is in alignment with a number of other initiatives underway, namely the Climate Action Plan. As you know, your honorable body took the Climate Smart Communities Pledge, and a program like this in our community earns us points. By earning those points towards Climate Smart Community certification, as well as clean energy certification, it opens us up for other grant opportunities just for the county having this available in our program, or in our program. So it's advantageous for the county in that regard. However, really, I think the greater advantage is that it opens up a unique financing program for private building owners, not-for-profit building owners, to make necessary energy upgrades that they might not otherwise undertake. This is a unique program, so in the long run, I think it's good, one, for the environment, as well as good for the economy.
Through the president to Mr. Garland, thank you very much for that answer. It sounds like you've done your homework. Sincerely appreciate it. Thank you.
Legislator Brew?
Yes, through you, Mr. President, to the administration. So, Mr. Garland, can you give me an example? You mentioned that the former Holiday Inn on Brooks Avenue by the airport, it expressed interest in participating in this program. What type of energy improvements would you feel that they would be engaged in? And the reason I'm asking this is that I would like to ensure that these dollars are going to be provided to provide genuine energy improvements and not to go in as part of a general renovation effort to help offset the costs of building improvements themselves.
Through you, Mr. President, I would expect the building improvements to be very similar to ones that have been done for what I characterize as really similar projects, really adaptive reuse of vacant space. They can include new boilers, new heating systems, photovoltaic, rooftop solar power systems. Again, the hot water systems throughout the buildings, the heating and the cooling, chillers are projects like that. Anything that involves, energy as it relates to the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing aspects of the building would be eligible projects.
Okay. Thank you. And again, Mr. President, I'd just like to restate, I do feel that we in good faith created the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee, and I do feel that this needs to be referred back to that body and have that body convey to this legislature as part of their plan, or if they choose to enact, submitting it to us prior than their formal submission of their plan, that they are indeed supportive of this. I personally feel that the ideas that we discussed tonight are of value in terms of saving energy. But again, I'd like to state that I do feel that this belongs referred back to the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee.
Legislator Hebert, I have one last question, Mr. President.
Go ahead, Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, sir. Through you to the administration. Not in the referral document, but in the actual language of the law, if you will. In paragraphs 6, 7, and 8, it talks about the financial details, and it talks about annual assessments, what actions happen if the annual assessment isn't paid. It talks about additional liens, etc. As I have some legal training, but not enough to dig through this legally. Could you please tell me, is there any exposure to the county of having someone who's not paying their taxes? It reads to me like somebody who doesn't pay their property taxes, who has one of these things going on, could have that, instead of having to actually pay the taxes or face foreclosure or anything, they could actually have it added to the terms of the annual of this installment lien or whatever, and therefore the county would not be receiving tax money for these properties. Am I misinterpreting that, or could you give me a written description of how that's supposed to work? Because that's the way it reads to me.
Through the President, this is Laura Smith, Chief Deputy County Attorney. Once financing is in place and a lien is placed on the property, that lien is then apportioned into yearly installment payments that are based on the life of the loan. The life of the loan cannot exceed the probable period of probable usefulness for the energy improvement that's being constructed on the property. So, let's say an average of 10 years on the life of these loans. The municipal liens and any municipal charges take precedent over any of these C-PACE liens. So someone cannot foreclose on cannot fail to pay their taxes. And in fact, to speak bluntly, we'll have another party involved and interested in this property. If someone fails to pay their property taxes, we can actually still foreclose on the properties. Municipal tax liens still take priority over the C-PACE liens. So that would wipe out the underlying lien for that year. So it's actually in the financing entity's interest to pay our tax liens. So it's almost like having a mortgage on the property. There's often instances if a property owner doesn't pay their taxes, but the property is mortgaged, the mortgage holder actually pays the property taxes because they don't want to lose their lien on the property. So by having C-PACE liens, in the event someone also doesn't pay their property taxes, oftentimes a financer would pay the property taxes in order to not lose their lien for the C-PACE lien.
Understood, through you, Mr. President, but they don't have to pay the property taxes. And the way I read this, those property taxes could be simply accounted for by being put in some sort of an additional lien that would be placed against this. Am I incorrect?
All municipal tax liens would be separate from the C-PACE liens. So they would still be above and have priority over any C-PACE lien through the President.
So this does not, through you, Mr. President, so this does not provide a property owner an alternative to paying taxes, is what I'm hearing you say.
Correct.
All right, thank you. I yield the floor, Mr. President.
Legislator Udelson.
Legislator Udelson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you, I just wanted to, first of all, compliment my colleagues on their due diligence on this. I did want to reiterate that this was a recommendation of the Climate Action Plan Advisory Committee that was done back on October 1st. I apologize to Legislator Brew if he was not aware of that action. A letter was sent on January 7th asking that this be introduced. And although Legislator Brew was not copied in, copies did go electronically to President Carbone, Legislator Boyce, Legislator Ansello, and Legislator Clerk Jack Moffitt. So I expected that, it then had been shared. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further discussion? I'd like to thank the legislators for all those questions and the decorum they were delivered in. And I'm grateful to Legislator Udelson and County Executive Bello for bringing this forward. However, I agree with Majority Leader Brew that this item would be an appropriate component to include in the Climate Action Plan if the Advisory Committee chooses to do so. I know we're looking forward to receiving and reviewing their proposed plan in the coming months. Therefore, I am referring this item to the Committee Action Plan Advisory Committee. Next item.
Item number 4, referral 21-0132, authorized contracts with Testa Construction, Inc., Postler and Jekyll Corp., Landry Mechanical Contractors, and Billetier Electric for the Monroe Community College Finger Lakes Workforce Development Center project.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by legislator Dondorfer, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Number 5.
Item number 5, referral 21-0133, amend the 2021 through 2026 capital improvement program and the 2021 capital budget to add a project entitled Space Utilization and Renovation of City Place and authorize financing for the project.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by legislator Dondorfer, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. President, Legislator Dondorfer.
Legislator Dondorfer, you have the floor.
Through you, Mr. President, what is, to the administration, what is the expected timeline for this project?
Through you, Mr. President, we expect to have the project completed and occupancy available in December of 2022.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. President, to the administration, what is the plan used for the Wegmans, the Wegman building space when this transition is complete? Will any county offices remain in there?
Through you, Mr. President, again, this is Mike Garland. That is a privately owned leased facility, and it would be vacated of any county office function.
Okay, and through you, Mr. President, to the administration, where is the funding to establish the capital fund for this project coming from?
Through you, Mr. President, again, Mike Garland, this is creating a new capital fund, the new funding source, if you will, for this project.
Okay, and through you, Mr. President, to the administration, will there be any increased debt in the form of interest incurring through the authorization of this project?
Mr. President, through you, yes, there will be.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any further discussion?
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert, you have the floor.
I believe there was a through you, Mr. President, I believe that to the administration, I believe there was a 2017 space utilization study. Is this usage consistent with that?
Through Mr. President, yes, this is a result of that evaluation.
And thank you, through you, Mr. President, to the administration. I'm interpreting this that office space at City Place has gone underutilized for a while. Do we know how long that is?
Through you, Mr. President, as you may recall, your honorable body authorized the financing for the renovation of the first and second floor to move planning and economic development there. So the 8th floor has remained essentially vacant of county functions since that time.
Through you, Mr. President, what is the lease payment on the Wegmans building that we'll be vacating? The space in the Wegmans building?
Through you, Mr. President, it's approximately $450,000 a year.
Through you, Mr. President, that means the payback period for this is something like 20 years. Is that correct?
Mr. President, excuse me, this is Robert Franklin, Director of Finance. Our lease at 80 West Main actually expires this July 31st. there are no more renewals. The lease would have to be renegotiated. We have been paying approximately $450,000 a year. I can't honestly say what the increment would be upon a lease renewal. So it's a little tough to tell. Just looking at debt service calculation real quick, given the market rates today and 20-year bond issuance, average annual debt service may run approximately $100,000 higher than the current year's lease, which may seem like a lot of money, but I would also offer that I've been in 80 West Main, and it currently needs a significant amount of work should the county want to remain there. Thank you, Mr. President.
So through Mr. President of the administration, what do you consider the payback period to be for this $9 million investment?
Mr. President, I really have not considered a payback period. It is the intent of Monroe County to maintain for quite the foreseeable future its ownership of 50 West Main, the City Place building, with the full intention of remaining in that building for at least the next 20 years. I believe the county is alleviating itself of the lease of 50 West Main is actually in a better overall financial interest for the county itself.
Could you elaborate on that, Mr. Franklin? I mean, if you didn't look into renegotiating the lease, how do you know it would be a better financial position?
Mr. President, in the time I've been here, in the few lease renegotiations that have gone on since my tenure, each has been renewed at a slightly higher annual payment than the expiring lease. And in all honesty, I'm making that assumption that the same would happen with the renewal of 80 West Main.
Have you reached out for a renegotiation, or is this strictly from past performance?
Mr. President, I have not yet. I have not reached out to the owner of the current building, and I do not believe our real property director has discussed a lease renewal with the current owner of that building.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Garland said that the project was completed in December of 2022. When does the lease run out at the current Wegmans building? Through you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, that it would be this July 31st.
Through you, Mr. President. So we have to negotiate an 18-month extension on Wegmans anyway?
Mr. President, it would either be, yes, Mr. President, and it would either be an 18-month extension or a month-to-month arrangement.
I believe this is my final question. Really, my final question is, through you, Mr. President, is you mentioned ownership of the Wegmans building. Do you know who owns the Wegmans building? What organization?
Mr. President, it is a local attorney, Mr. Ike Evangelo. I believe it's his, the specific brother is Bernie Ike Evangelo.
Thank you. I had no idea. I yield the floor.
Mr. President, Legislator Brew.
Go ahead, Legislator Brew.
Yes, through you, Mr. President, to the administration, just clarification on City Place. Is this strictly the 8th floor, or does this also include another floor as well?
Mr. President, the primary renovation will be on the 8th floor. However, additional renovations are required in floors 3, 5, and 7.
Okay. and through you, Mr. President, to the administration, I don't think any of us would be having the number of questions that we have tonight had it not been for the price tag, $9 million for one floor and some minor renovations to an additional 3. I personally feel that that's a tremendous amount of money. And I think as Legislator Hebert pointed out, you divide, $450,000 a month and the $9 million, you've got and when you add the cost of that, your bond financing on top of that, and, you've got a tremendous payback. Through you, Mr. President, to administration, can you tell me what type of improvements do you see as necessary in the existing building that houses county employees right now?
Through you, Mr. President, I'm not sure if there's someone who can answer the details of this a little bit better than I can, but let me offer this. As has been stated, the condition of the Wegman building leaves a lot to be desired, and there would need to be significant upgrades to that facility for it to happen, and for it to be something that would be usable for us longer term moving forward. So that's why Mr. Franklin had stated that the $450,000 number would be significantly higher, because there would be significant capital improvements that would need to go towards that. But another factor that complicates this is also the expansion of the conflict defender's office, and also I believe the public defender's office too. So we're going to be requiring additional staff additional facilities to house the expanded staff there. So this really isn't a one-for-one replacement here. Again, it's a complicating factor. There's been a significant addition to the staff, and we are looking at significantly higher costs that would be resulted of building out additional space for rental.
Okay. Thank you. And through the president, to the administration, I just heard that the public defender is in there, and the conflict, the Office of Conflict Defender. Am I right in that? I always mess that up. But anyways, other than those two departments, what else is in that building through the president to the administration? That are county-related services?
Through the president, the public defender is not in 80 West Main Street. They are in 36 West Main Street in the executive office building. In 80 West Main Street is Office of Mental Health, conflict defender, and pretrial services, all giving support to county needs.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And I'm just trying to get my bearings on the building. So next to City Place, I walk by the public defender's entry very often, right? So through you, Mr. President, to the administration, this building actually fronts Main Street then? Is that true?
Through the president, that is correct.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Legislator Dondorfer.
Legislator Dondorfer.
I just have one quick question for the administration. I know that moving desks sometimes goes very challenging. Is there a cost that's going to be associated with this move?
Through you, Mr. President, Mike Garland. Yes, we do have a move management budgeted in the $9 million project cost.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Garland. In your projections, Did anybody do any due diligence on what it would cost to do the improvements in the existing building? Or you said, I believe someone said a large amount, but do we have a better estimate of what that amount would be and what those improvements would be? What would be needed?
Through Mr. President, our analysis did not evaluate capital improvements required at 80 West Main Street.
So then it would be tough to say if it would be financially beneficial to move. It might be a small amount for the improvements.
Tim Murphy, through to the president. The building would require all new plumbing fixtures. The plumbing fixtures are very old and they're constantly in need of repair. It would need, all new carpeting, probably some new windows. The HVAC was replaced a few years ago, but it's not without its faults. And from time to time, there are some roof issues. So an exact dollar amount is not known, but anytime that you negotiate a shorter term lease and need improvements, your cost per square foot is going to go up.
But you have no idea what those things would cost, and you have no idea if all those things are absolutely necessary. Nobody's looked into that. To the president, I don't know what the costs are, but I do know that they need to be done. Every single one of those things, even the heating and ventilation that was just repaired?
The HVAC, was replaced, but it's not without, its own glitches, which they do address. But the building is old and tired, and
would the owners be responsible for any of those repairs?
The owners, anytime you're going to negotiate and you talk about, your needs, again, those needs are going to be reflected in your negotiated lease cost.
But that wasn't done, correct?
No.
So we don't know what it would cost. We don't know what we'd need to do, and we never tried to negotiate.
We do know what the condition of the building is. I mean, that's true. Cost, no. Is it going to, house all of the additional staff that's coming from conflict defender and fit? No.
And we don't know, and we didn't try to negotiate anything with the present lease.
There's been preliminary conversations between myself and the landlord. Nothing has been finalized. And I really don't want to continue to try and negotiate, my lease, through the legislature. It's counterproductive.
You don't want to negotiate the lease through the legislature? Is that I don't understand what that means.
If we continue to talk about, what our needs are and that, then we're gonna, we're not in a good negotiating position.
But if we approve this, we're not gonna. But if we approve this, we're not gonna negotiate at all. I mean, if we go to this step, correct? Or are we using this to help with the negotiations?
Let us say, Kobe, we get a chance.
I thought I was waiting for an answer, but I guess I don't have one.
Mr. President, I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Are we taking this action to use it as a tool to negotiate with the existing lease? Because Mr. Murphy said we don't want to negotiate the lease through the legislature. So does that mean we are trying to negotiate the lease while we're also trying to do this move?
To you, Mr. President, we need to have an extension of the lease, and I believe that's what he's speaking of. But also, I would like to remind everybody that this organization spent quite a bit of money to purchase City Place, which is a facility that we own, and just from a long-term standpoint, and also it's underutilized in terms of the 8th floor being vacant for the most part now. This is a chance to consolidate our operation into a facility that we own, and again, we just think that it's the prudent financial move to make.
Yeah, but you say it's the prudent financial move, but you can't answer any of those questions about what it's going to cost. There's a lot of things that you didn't do the due diligence, so I don't know how you could say it'd be a prudent financial move. But any further discussion on this?
Legislator Colby.
Legislator Colby.
Through you, Mr. President, can the administration give us a highlight of why it seems the $9 million seems awful high per square foot for the remodeling the 8th floor, maybe some improvements to the 7th, 5th, and 3rd, I think is what I heard. Could you give us a highlight of what's driving that cost up so high?
Yep. Through you, Mr. President, Mike Garland. We had LaChase Construction do an estimate for us with as much detail that we had. It's essentially a gut and rehab of the space. It does require a number of hard-walled offices throughout versus an open landscape, although once we get into design, we want to minimize that, certainly. It is a total project cost, again, including soft costs, contingency, security, technology, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, which is a significant portion of that cost. It computes to about $265 a gross square foot for that space, but again, it does involve a lot of hard-walled offices, which really changes the heating, ventilation, and lighting of the space in terms of how we provide those services presently versus, say, a landscape open space where the HVAC and lighting is more straightforward. But given the nature and design of the space and the requirements that they would have, does lend itself to an increased cost.
Through you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mike. What was the improvements you're talking about on the 3rd, 5th, and 7th floor?
Through Mr. President, it's primarily the 3rd floor, and it's necessary to arrange the space in a way for the privacy of the clients. Yep. And to add to that, we do need to create a certain amount of sight and sound separation in that 3rd floor area. And I believe that is, it's about 5,000 square feet on the 3rd floor and 29,000 square feet on the 8th floor.
I assume when Chase did the cost or estimate, the age of that building, are we going to get some surprises like asbestos, or has that been calculated in?
Through Mr. President, that's included in the price.
I'll leave the floor back to you, Mr. President.
Legislator Baines.
Legislator Baines.
Through you, Mr. President, to the administration. The public defender is housed in Mr. Iacovangelo's building, isn't that right?
Through you, Mr. President, I misspoke. The conflict defender is housed in Mr. Iacovangelo's building. The public defender is, I believe, in the executive office building across Fitzhugh Street.
So I'd like to, through you, Mr. President.
Excuse me, who owns that building? The executive building.
I would defer to Mr. Murphy if he knows that, Mr. President. I don't know that offhand.
To the president, it's owned by an investor out of New York City.
But you don't know the name?
I can pronounce his first name. I have a little tough time with his last name, Milos, and I apologize. I really can't remember his last name off the top of my head.
You can spell it if you can't pronounce it.
If you give me a minute, I can look it up and I can share with you.
Okay, go ahead, Legislator Baines.
In order to give the viewers and the legislators a sense of the condition of these buildings, through you, Mr. President, to the administration, would you characterize the quality of the district attorney's facility as it relates to the quality, and I'm talking about ADA compliance, HVAC, corridors that are standard, elevators that work, conditions for offices? Could you compare the three different legal services that we provide to our community in terms of the quality of their housing, if you will, in a general sense?
Through the president, the district attorney's office, while I haven't been in the entire space, it's been well over 20 years since the county acquired the space, and there have been little overall renovations to the space since then. The executive office building is in the process of being renovated by the newest owner that is our landlord now, Milos Vovikdic. And so therefore within the next couple of years, space that the county occupies will be all renovated. Right now, it's probably equal in condition to the space of 80 West Main where the conflict defender is. Conflict defender, that space hasn't been renovated since before the Gallo and Iacovangelo law firm occupied the space 20 years ago.
Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, could you more directly make a comparison between the quality of the housing for the district attorney's office and the quality of the housing in terms of its professionalism? Everybody on this call, everybody here has been to school districts. We've been to public buildings. We know the difference between the quality of different public buildings. So I'm looking for a more precise, general description of the difference in quality for the district attorney's office in contrast to the conflict defender's office and the public defender's office, please.
Legislator
Through the
Baines,
president.
that's a very ambiguous question. I don't know how he's going to answer that question, but you can go ahead and try to answer it.
Through the president, I can give a very general answer in the fact that, I just indicated that the district attorney's office has had more recent renovations, 20 plus years than either one of the executive office building or 80 West Main Street. That would be the best that I could do.
Well, through you, Mr. President, could you characterize the care for the facility? Who cares for the public?
Point of order, Mr. President. This has nothing to do with $9 million upgrade to the existing.
I agree with that point of order. Legislator Baines, do you have any other questions that it's more pertinent to this referral?
I'm discussing the very matters you brought up, Mr. President, you and your colleagues.
Yeah, but I'm upholding the point of order. So do you have anything else you want to object to my point of order?
Thank you.
We'll go to a roll call vote. Anybody else want the floor?
Yes, Legislator Mafucci.
Legislator Mafucci.
Through the president to Mike Garland. Mr. Garland, are you in favor of this initiative, and if so, why?
Point of order asked and answered.
I agree. I'll uphold that point of order.
Mr. President, Legislator Brew.
Legislator Brew.
Yes, I'd like to explain my vote. I will be voting to support this. However, I do feel that the $9 million is excessive. Yes, I know LaChase Construction probably very recently provided a general estimate as to what it would cost. And I know that is pretty much standard procedure when you're trying to establish a budget cost for this type of renovation. I would also say that during I would just like to ask when do you anticipate the design and engineering to occur, the issuance of plans and specs, and the actual bidding to occur? So we have some sort of a sense of what the timeline for this construction is going to be, and if it's going to be in a single phase, multi-phases, or what. I'm sorry, that question became a little bit protracted, but it was just some points I thought that I needed an answer to before we continue.
Yep. Through you, Mr. President, we expect to be back before your honorable body for approval of a design contract. That would be in, again, June, July for approval of that. Professional service, and then we would be back for approval of construction contracts. We'd expect that in the first quarter of 2022. And as you may know, this has been before the planning board meeting this past March.
Okay.
And if I may offer just a point of reference, the MCC project that was approved prior to consideration of this referral was an $11.4 million project for about 50,000 square feet of space. Very open plan. Not a lot of office space built into that. And that was 11.4, 50,000. So that's close to $230 a square foot. Again, that's actual bid numbers in today's market. So, by point of comparison, we're at about $265 per gross square foot for the 8th floor and the 3rd floor combined. We think that's a fair and reasonable estimate. Again, we had LaChase look at that number, and by comparison to actual hard bid numbers in today's dollars, we think that the $9 million is a fair and reasonable budget for the proposed renovations.
Thank you. And Mr. President, and just continuing to explain my vote, I will be voting in affirmative. And I do wholeheartedly agree. I mean, we all are all part of the county. And the better workforce that we have working for us, the better off we all are as a county, including this legislative body. When you're with the competitive workforce that's out there, and I know we've heard before the difficulty and how difficult it is to attract, the legal professionals, both to the conflict defender's office and to the public defender's office. I do think that that's integral part of the sales pitch, if you will, for the county to actually provide a working space that is conducive to a modern type of working space. So although, I still think the price tag is somewhat high, I do think we did due diligence tonight and asking all the right questions, because as I just said, that $9 million is not chump change. So I will be voting in the affirmative for this referral. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Legislator Boyce. I agree with your line of questioning, Mr. President. And some of the questions did not get answered. And for that reason, I'm going to ask that we table this until we get the information necessary.
Do I have a second for that tabling motion?
Second.
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert. We'll go to a roll call vote. No discussion on a tabling motion. Roll call vote, please, Mr. Clerk. This is to table this referral.
Mr. Brew.
No.
Mr. Felder.
No.
Mr. Felder votes no. Mr. Flagler Mitchell. Mr. Flagler Mitchell. Mr. Alcoffer.
No.
Mr. Ansello.
No.
Mr. Ansello votes no. Ms. Barnhart.
No.
Ms. Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroth is excused. Mr. Baines.
No.
Mr. Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce.
Yes.
Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby.
No.
Mr. Colby votes no. Mr. Delahanty.
No.
Mr. Delahanty votes no. Mrs. DeFlorio.
No.
Mrs. DeFlorio votes no. Mr. Dondorfer.
No.
Mr. Dondorfer votes no. Ms. Hasman.
No.
Ms. Hasman votes no. Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Mr. Keofitlasi.
No.
Mr. Keofitlasi votes no. Ms. Lamar.
No.
Ms. Lamar votes no. Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Lee votes no. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marinetti.
No.
Mr. Marinetti votes no. Mr. Morelli.
No.
Mr. Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman.
No.
Ms. Roman votes no. Ms. Smith.
No.
Ms. Smith votes no. Ms. Taylor.
No.
Ms. Taylor votes no. Mr. Turp.
No.
Mr. Turp votes no. Mr. Wilcox.
No.
Mr. Wilcox votes no. Mr. Wilt.
No.
Mr. Wilt votes no. Mr. Udelson.
No.
Mr. Udelson votes no. President Carbone?
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell?
No.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes no. The motion to table fails 3-25.
Okay, any discussion back on the original referral? Any further
Mr.
discussion?
President,
Who's that?
Colby,
Got Legislator Colby on the floor.
thank you. I do agree with the makers of the table motion that our questions and answers, or our questions did not get answers or fullest. But I believe we got a couple weeks before the full ledge. And I would hope that the administration maybe could give us a more detailed itemized list broadly of the, or a copy of the report from the Chase of why the cost is where it is, including the furniture and stuff, what's included besides just repairs. I think that would go a long ways for me approving this when it comes to first full ledge instead of this committee at this time. But I didn't want to stop the process. That's why I did not support the table in motion. I would like to give the administration some time to give us more information. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of this referral?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes, opposed. Legislator
Opposed? And so that's two opposed.
Who was the second one?
Me. Okay, carries. Next item.
Item number 6, referral 21-0134, acceptance of grants from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation for the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Project.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Two quick questions. Through you to the administration, why does this referral state at up to 5 stations? It sounds like we don't know the cost of them, or what's the limiting factor that we list 5, but we don't think we can do them all?
Hey.
Through you, Mr. President, Mike Garland, we intend to do all 5.
Through you, Mr. President, why does the referral stay at up to 5?
Through you, Mr. President, we should probably not set up to 5. That might have been language that we had pulled from the grant initially, but we're very confident we'll be able to accommodate all 5 locations.
I yield the floor, Mr. President.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Item number 7, referral 21-0135. Amend Resolution 122 of 2017 as amended by Resolution 113 of 2018 to extend and increase the contract with WorkFit Medical for Sheriff's Employees Medical Services.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Boyce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 8, referral 21-0136. Authorize a contract with Roberts Wesleyan College for Rochester Threat Advisory Committee Program Management.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Boyce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. President, Legislator Boyce.
Legislator Boyce, you have the floor.
Yes, I want to thank the sheriff for bringing this forth. I do sit on the Rochester Threat Assessment Committee, and I believe that this is necessary to have somebody in this managerial position to utilize all the intelligence and work done by the threat assessment team. And I think it will make it a more effective committee. So I will be voting in favor of this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 9, referral 21-0137. Acceptance of a grant from the United States Department of Justice, United States Marshal Service, Western District of New York, for the United States Marshal Service, New York, New Jersey, Regional Fugitive Task Force, Rochester Division.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Boyce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 10, referral 21-0138. Acceptance of a grant from the New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services for the Offices of the Public Defender and the Conflict Defender for the provision of indigent legal services.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second. By Legislator Boyce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any
Flagler
discussion
Mitchell.
on this?
And Lamar.
Legislator Flagler Mitchell
And
Lamar second.
I'd like to second
correct?
also.
Who was that?
Legislator Lee.
Legislator Lee.
Okay, Legislator Lee, you're on there as the second also. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. President. Legislator Flagler
Yes.
Mitchell.
Go ahead, Legislator, you have the floor.
Yes, just due to the administration. How many positions do we have in the Conflict Defender's Office that is not filled that we budgeted for?
Mr. President, I believe we have Mark Funk available to answer that.
Correct. Good evening through you to the President. Last year, the legislature created a number of positions. I believe 3 positions were created, and they have remained unfilled, primarily due to the nature of the positions and the pandemic. I deemed it appropriate not to fill those positions.
Thank you. Just due to the administration again. Is there a timeline when those positions will be filled?
That's somewhat through the president, somewhat dependent on pandemic and when we open back up. For example, one of the positions is for a mentoring program coordinator, and I've been reluctant to have the mentor program go forward, which would essentially encourage people to have contact with each other with the pandemic going. So once I kind of see a break in the pandemic and it's lightening up and people should be getting together and the courts are opening up more, I intend to fill those positions.
Okay, thank you. I yield the floor.
Yield the floor. Any further discussion on this, please? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 11, referral 21-0139, authorize the creation of 3 new positions in the Public Defender's Office and authorize the creation of 9 new positions in the Conflict Defender's Office as part of Year 3 funding of the statewide expansion of the Hurl Herring Project Grant.
Move it, Mr.
Move
President.
it, Mr. President.
Second.
Second.
So that's moved by Legislator Boyce and Hebert and seconded by
Legislator Flagler.
Legislator Flagler and Delahanty. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion?
Legislator
Seeing none, I'm sorry, Legislator Roman.
Yes, through you, Mr. President, just a question in regards to this third year of funding. With this being the third year, is there any thought in how these positions will be funded after this year?
Through you, Mr. President, Tim Donaher, Monroe County Public Defender. This is actually the third year of a 5-year grant that the county received in 2019, where the county is receiving $7.6 million in the third year. In year 4, that will increase to $10.1 million, and in year 5 will increase to $12.7 million. It's the intent of the Office of Indigent Legal Services that oversees this grant funding stream that funding level will continue in the downstream years.
Perfect, thank you. That is all.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 12, referral 21-0140, authorize an intermunicipal agreement with the City of Rochester to accept pass-through funding from the United States Department of Justice for the 2020 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Boyce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty and Legislator Ansello. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Legislator Boyce.
Legislator Boyce, you have the floor.
Yeah, I have a question with regards to this funding. Given the fact that the climate in New York State is kind of trending the other way with regards to some of our law enforcement, how do we see we're going to be able to manage this? Are we going to do something differently based on that?
Mr. President, I believe Jennifer Ball is available to answer that.
Yes, through you, Mr. President. What we've noticed with this program, which is well over 20 years old, is that our approach and our style of supervision has changed to reflect the needs of the clientele. This is a highly specialized and small caseload. And you'll note that our officers are trauma informed. Our officers are trained in motivational interviewing and behavioral cognitive programming. And we are working with these offenders very closely with family. And basically what we're doing is, in a sense, really contributing to the rehabilitative efforts.
So when you, through the president, when you talk about motivational interviewing, I'm very familiar with it, but what kind of techniques are you using more specifically through the president?
through the president, what we are doing, again, because it is a much smaller caseload, so that is the technique. So, a specialized and significantly smaller caseload of approximately 30 offenders allows the officers to spend a good deal more time with them. There is an extensively additional amount of field work. Officers are engaging people under probation supervision with their families in their homes, creating a lot of working extensively with treatment agencies. And again, really promoting the cognitive behavioral interventions, creative journaling, and employment readiness. So these are all things that we try to do on generalized caseloads, but these services are enhanced with these more specialized smaller cases.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Bowe. Appreciate that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Item carries. Next, 13.
Item number 13, referral 21-0141, acceptance of a grant from the United States Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs for the fiscal year 2020 DNA Capacity Enhancement and Backlog Reduction Program.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Boyce, second by Legislator Dondorfer. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 14, referral 21-0142, acceptance of a grant from the New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services for the fiscal year 2020 State Law Enforcement Terrorism Prevention Program.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second. By Legislator Boyce, second by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Got a little echo. Maybe who's ever not on this could, who doesn't have the floor, could mute their microphone, please. Go ahead, Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration. At the end of this sentence in the third paragraph, the one just above specific legislative actions, says this year's funding represents an increase of $329,000 plus. Is that for this year, or is that for the 3-year term of the program? Or maybe?
Mr. President, I believe we have Director Tantillo available, or Jennifer Curley.
Through you, Mr. President, Rich Tantillo, that is going to be an increase over what was allocated to us from last year. So we're seeing that increase for this year's allocation.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. So that means that there is only about $125,000 left for years 2 and 3. Is that correct?
Well, I know that the allocation, if we take the $329,000 and then $170,000 that was listed, it would cover the allocations for this year and other totals associated with what you've been listed are part of other grants that we received from the state of New York and Homeland Security.
Through you, Mr. President, I guess I continue to be confused. It says that the grant of $454,500 is for the period September 1, 2020 through August 31st, 2023. So that's a 3-year period. If 1 year's increase is $329,000, doesn't that just leave like 125 left for the remaining 2 years? What am I missing?
Well, with that, we have multiple grants that overlap, and there's several pots of money that we work from. So next year's allocation, there's an allocation for us in subsequent years that follow.
I give up. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next item.
Item number 15, referral 21-0143, authorize a contract with the University of Rochester for continuing development and sustainment of the county's medical countermeasure program.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second. Seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes, Mr. President, this is Legislator Hasman.
Yes, Legislator Hasman.
I would just like to declare my interest.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert?
Just a quick question. I'm trying to understand what this county's medical countermeasure program is. I'm not familiar with it. Is this the program that we've been developing for a long time for situations like COVID that required distribution of emergency, vaccinations and equipment and all that kind of stuff? Or is it something different?
Mr. President, we have several people here who might want to handle this. We have Mike Sayers from the Health Department, Director Tantello, and Christina Doherty from Office of Emergency Management.
Through you, Mr. President, this is Mike Sayers from Public Health. You are correct. This is an ongoing program where we are preparing for just like what we're doing right now for COVID-19. This particular contract helped us set up our county staging site and helps us sustain that planning effort, along with our points of dispensing to give out vaccinations as we are doing right now. So it's a constant ongoing sustainment effort to maintain those contacts, update those plans, as we've talked about earlier, about buildings changing, making different facility changes. So yes, you are correct in what you said earlier.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Legislator Brew.
Legislator Brew.
Yes, thank you to the President, to the administration. Now that I understand a little bit more about the details of the provisions through Legislator Hebert's question, I guess I'd like to ask the question that the U of R always seems to be the primary respondent to many medical related services. My question to the President, to the administration, that we, in consideration that we have two major healthcare providers within our jurisdiction, one being the U of R, the other one being Rochester Regional Health, is this something that is exclusively under the the professionalism and the capabilities of the U of R? And was the Rochester Regional Health invited to bid? I'd just like to understand a little bit more what goes through the selection process of these type of referrals.
Through the President, this is Mike Sayers again from Public Health. We did a RFQ update in December that re-awarded this contract to the U of R. Rochester Regional did not submit an application for that. It was open for bid for any applicant that met the requirement of having, we were putting in some requirements of having a person on site versus, like, for example, down in the state of Texas who wants to help out with planning that is not familiar with our area. So there's nothing in particular that lends itself to U of R except for their experience. But if Rochester Regional or another entity locally had applied for this and had exceeded U of R's capability, I am confident that they would have been awarded that contract.
Okay, thank you. And to the President on a follow-up question. So I guess how are we to be assured that the pricing that we're receiving from the U of R is somewhat of a competitive price, having no basis of comparison?
Through the President, this is Mike Sayers again from Public Health. The position in my office, which is the Office of Public Health Preparedness, which is a division under Dr. Mendoza, it's a planning office. We have 4 planners under me, one of which is this contractor, and pretty much it's the same equivalent of the grade 14 planners that I have within my office. So it's a comparison to other submissions that we had for the RFQ in past years. In general, The other submissions have been at a higher cost than what U of R has proposed, and U of R's proposal has been generally in line with what our grade 14 county level workers have been who do this type of work.
Okay, thank you. And just one more question to Mr. Through you, Mr. President, the administration. So for those future instances where there would be other types of medical services rendered, is it safe to say that there is every attempt to make sure that all of the major healthcare systems are made aware of the RFPs and invited to provide a competitive bid?
Through the President, Mike Sayers, yes, we follow the county procurement process and everyone gets the opportunity to submit a bid.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
I have a question. You said that other responders for the RFQ were higher than the bid. Who were those other responders? There's only two health systems in Rochester.
Yes, through the President, this is Mike Sayers again. I can provide you that information tomorrow. I don't have that in front of me right now, but in general, we have had out-of-state responders who think they can plan and conduct training and exercises effectively without being from the Monroe County area. And that is what I was referring to.
And how do these people know? Do you reach out to them? Like, how would Rochester Regional Health, which is the other healthcare provider in our community, how would they know to apply for this RFQ? Do you reach out to them, or are they supposed to be aware of it? I'm just wondering how the process works, because a lot of these referrals that I see, there's a sentence in there that the U of R, the strong system, was the only responder. So is it because the other system doesn't want to respond, or are they unaware that they can respond?
Through the President, Mike Sayers again. We work with the county procurement office, contracting. We produce the proposal. They submit it out through all of their normal channels. That allows everybody to be able to respond to that. I cannot talk to more of those additional details. I think I would have to refer to the county administration on that. But I do know that we're following the rules and regulations of putting it out in the public.
Maybe the county administration can answer my question if it's not too confusing. How do you reach out to the responders?
Mr. President, if you can give me 1 second, please.
Yeah, take your time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. To you, the department that initiates the RFP typically will identify potential respondents, but then in addition to that, any RFP is published on our website and advertised according to our procurement policy.
You may not be able to answer this question, but besides advertising it, has anybody specifically ever reached out to Rochester Regional Health with one of these proposals?
To you, Mr. President, yes, we have, and again, that's what I had mentioned earlier. The departments typically identify people, organizations who would be potential responders, and know that this is a case where we would reach out to Rochester Regional very regularly for any type of health service related RFP.
Could you identify the individual that you reach out to? Is it one specific individual?
Mr. President, I would have to get back to you with that. I think it would be different depending on the RFP, but let me, we can check on that. We can give you that information.
I would appreciate that if you could get back to me on that, because I've talked to some people at Rochester Regional Health, and they say that nobody's reached out to them. So if you could give me an individual, we could get to the bottom of this. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 16, referral 21-0144. Amend Resolution 284 of 2020 to extend the time period of the intermunicipal agreement with the City of Rochester for the fiscal year 2016 Complex Coordinated Terrorist Attack Grant.
Moved by Legislator Boyce, seconded by Legislator Delahanty and Legislator Ansello. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Legislator Boyce.
Legislator Boyce, you have the floor.
Yeah, I have a question through the president with regards to this funding. Since last year, there was a lot of big events canceled. How much money has been rolled over to cover upcoming events, if any, with regards to this work?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. President, we're on item 144.
That's correct.
Okay, I believe Tim Henry from Public Safety is available to answer that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. McCann. Through you, Mr. President, there's approximately $6,000 in question that the Rochester Police Department would roll over, and we've asking for this extension to give them some time. And we have the next scheduled training event tentatively scheduled for fall of 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Henry, for that. Through the president. So this is to cover some backfill and overtime costs incurred by the City of Rochester with regards to exercise development and their participation. Is that true?
I believe that's 100% correct. Through you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. I appreciate that.
Perfect. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next, 17.
Item number 17, referral 21-0145. Authorized contracts with the County of Monroe Industrial Development Agency and Environmental Design and Research, Landscape Architecture, Engineering, and Environmental Services for professional services for the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan.
Move it, Mr. President.
Legislator Wilt, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. 18.
Item number 18, referral 21-0146. Authorize an intermunicipal agreement with the City of Rochester to provide water quality monitoring for the beach at Durand Eastman Park.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Ansello, seconded by Legislator Smith and Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Item carries. Next.
Item number 19, referral 21-0147. Amend the 2021 capital budget and bond resolution 377 of 2020 to provide an increase in funding for the Highway Lighting Rehabilitation Central Project in the City of Rochester and the towns of Chili and Gates, and authorize a contract with Greenman Peterson for engineering services.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Colby, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 20, referral 21-0148. Authorize a contract with Bergman Associates, Architects, Engineers, Landscape Architects, and Surveyors for engineering services for the Middle Road project in the town of Henrietta.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Colby, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 21, referral 21-0149, classification of action and determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the acquisition of real property for the Culver Road Highway Improvement Project at 4225 Culver Road in the town of Arundecoit.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Dannendorfer, seconded by Legislator Wilt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 22, referral 21-0150, authorize the acquisition of interest in real property for the Culver Road Highway Improvement Project at 4225 Culver Road in the town of Arundecoit.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Colby, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President, Colby?
Yes.
Through you,
Legislator
Mr.
Colby.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President, what kind of interest are we going to inquire? Are we buying some property or just a lease of some land or easement?
The President, it's a permanent easement for road signage.
Okay, thank you. I yield the floor back to you, Mr. President.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 23, referral 21-0151, classification of action and determination of significance pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act for the acquisition of real property for the English Road Highway Improvement Project in the town of Greece.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
By Legislator Dannendorfer, seconded by Legislator Wilt. Is there any discussion?
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration. On the right side of the dollar amounts, there are some acronyms I've not seen before. TE, Tango Echo, and PE, Papa Echo. Can you tell me what those are, please?
Through the President, TA is tax account, PE is permanent easement.
And I'm sorry, through you, Mr. President, what was the Tango Echo, the TE?
Tax account.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. Yield the floor.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 24, referral 21-0152, authorize the acquisition of interest in real property for the English Road Highway Improvement Project in the town of Greece.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Colby, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 25, referral 21-0153, authorize a contract with the University of Rochester Medical Center for medical services for Monroe Community Hospital.
Move it, Mr. President.
By Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Legislator Smith.
Mr. President, this is Legislator Hasman.
Legislator Hasman, go ahead.
Just want to declare my interest.
Thank you.
Legislator
Any further
Smith.
discussion? Legislator Smith, you have the floor.
Through the President, does this contract represent any increase from the expiring contract? And if so, how much?
Mr. President, we have Alyssa Tallow available to answer that.
Through the President, this does demonstrate an increase. We did request for additional psych services for the residents. It also does indicate an increase in salaries and benefits for URMC medical staff, which is expected.
Thank you. Through the President to the administration, what other organizations responded to the request for proposal?
Through the President, the only other response we received was for alumni staffing, which is based out of Bridgewater, New Jersey.
Thank you. I yield the floor.
Mr. President, Colby?
Yes, Legislator Colby.
The other respondent to this contract, can you elaborate why they didn't meet the needs? Is it just because they're out of area, or was their cost higher or lower? Through you, Mr.
Through the
President.
president, their cost was higher and they are a staffing agency. So rather than being able to provide us with specifics for who would be filling what positions, it was a proposal for bodies to fill positions. From a continuity of care standpoint, that also poses challenges. They also did not include a response to include the medical director, which was required as part of the RFP. And for obvious reasons, MCH does need a medical director.
Thank you for that thoroughness. I leave the floor back to you, Mr. President.
Yeah, Ms. Tallow, does Rochester Regional Health ever respond to any of these things?
Through the president, they have not typically responded to anything since I have been in my position. We have made sure that they have been included, but we have not received any responses from them related to the medical affiliation, nor the ventilator and pediatric unit, nor the clinical staff. Well, I should say the clinic staff.
I guess I have the same question. How are they made aware?
When we develop the RFP to release, we put who we recommend as suggested recipients for the RFP. So for this RFP, we had requested that URMC as well as Rochester Regional Health be proposed recipients.
And on the I don't have it in front of me. Does it on this referral? Does it say anything about Rochester Strong being the only responder? I thought I saw that. Maybe I didn't.
Through the president, I don't know if it does state that. Obviously, it was not the only respondent because we did have the staffing agency respond as well.
Oh, yeah. I think it said on the original that they were the most qualified, but it didn't say that there were multiple responders. So I guess that answers my question. Thank you. Any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Carries. Next.
Item number 26, referral 21-0154. Amend the 2021-2026 capital improvement program and the 2021 capital budget to add a project entitled Energy Improvement Equipment Acquisition and authorize financing for the project.
Move it, Mr. President.
Moved by Legislator Dondorfer, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 27, referral 21-0155. Amend Resolution 431 of 2020 as amended by Resolution 24 of 2021. Authorize contracts for the provision of mental health, developmental disability, and alcoholism and substance abuse services in 2021 for the Monroe County Office of Mental Health.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved by Legislator Smith, seconded by Legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Legislator Hebert.
Mr. President.
Legislator Hebert, I believe you spoke first.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the administration. When are these positions going live?
Mr. President, we have Kelly Wilmot available to answer that.
Through the president, this is Kelly Wilmot with the Office of Mental Health. We are currently in the process of hiring. We've already added several new staff. We are currently at 12 full-time positions and 6 part-time positions, and we are continuing to interview.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. President. Have these additional positions already been announced to the public?
Through the president, these positions have been announced. There's been several forums where we've been providing updates about the expansion of the FIT team. So yes, these have been announced.
Through you, Mr. President, have they been announced as already filled or have they been announced as to be filled?
Through the president, they have been announced as filled.
No, Mr. President, excuse me, this is Jeff McCann. No, they were announced as to be created. We have not announced them as being filled. We're in the process of filling them now.
All right, thank you, Mr. McCann. Through you, Mr. President, to the administration. Is there such a thing? The sheriff's office offers ride-alongs, and you have to sign waivers and stuff. If you choose to take one of those, they go out of the various substations. Does the FIT team have anything similar to that?
Through the president, this is Kelly Wilmot again. Our FIT team rides along with the Sheriff's Department and other law enforcement, but we as a team do not have people ride along with our team.
Okay, that through you, Mr. President, to the administration, I just want to comment that I've heard that some people were in fact doing ride-alongs, and I wasn't aware of any criteria, policies, whatever, and it seems that riding with the FIT team would require dramatically different things than riding with the sheriff, just because of the nature of the people that would be involved. One last question through you, Mr. President. I believe the newspaper and several TV stations reported that they had been told the FIT team was available 24/7 starting January, and I want to say January 1st, but certainly starting in January. Is that true, that the FIT team has been available 24/7 since January?
Through the president, the FIT team has been available responding in person 24/7 since February.
I'm going to yield the floor, but I may need to come back, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this?
Mr. President, Colby.
Go ahead, Legislator Colby.
Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, I had a lengthy discussion with the police chief from Rockport Police Officers Department, and he had some concerns or wanted to know when the FIT team was going to be available for the follow-up visits like they used to be, and he seems that has been dropped, and he thought that was as important, if not more important, than the crisis during when it first happens, but to make sure the person doesn't relapse and have another crisis. Could the administration elaborate on that?
Through the chair, through the president, this is Corinda Crosdale, Deputy County Executive for Health and Human Services. The follow-up, we agree with you, is a critical component of the work that FIT does, and that has been and continues to be part of the work that they do on a regular basis.
Through you, Mr. President, is that easily accessed now? Because the impression I got from the police department was that was not being done like it was back in October, November of last year.
Through the president, yes, I review the data on a regular basis, so I get the breakdown of the direct contact with law enforcement, comparatively speaking to the follow-up with the clientele. I would point out that the follow-up doesn't typically include law enforcement. This is the engagement with the behavioral health system. So the idea is to decrease future engagement with law enforcement by making sure that that connection with the behavioral health system occurs and that it remains intact.
To you, Mr. President, I think where I was trying to go with the question or the statement that was made to me was the police department would like to not be participating in it, but they would like to be aware of that follow-ups being done, because if it's not, it makes a difference maybe how they respond if they get called back to the same address, for example.
Sure, absolutely. Through the president, if the officer were to re-engage FIT, What we will try to do is send out the same fit worker because they are working with that individual. If that fit worker is not available, we will make sure that the initial contact that was made with the initial fit worker, we'll make sure that that's communicated to them, that there was further police engagement with their client, and they'll make sure that that's part of their follow-up. But that's going to happen from time to time.
Okay. Through you, Mr. President, I'd like to go back to this 24/7 statement that was made February 1st. I know I listened to a podcast or a radio program a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, and it was stated January 1st by the administration. And also, when we had the healthcare special meeting of the Ledge, it was stated that it wasn't done yet either. And now you're saying it's in February. Well, we had that in March. And at that time, all the health professionals told us there wasn't 24/7. So there seems to be a lot of confusion on when 24/7 is available or isn't available.
Through the President, thank you for the opportunity to provide some clarification around that. As you know, we needed to ramp up staffing for the FIT team. So we utilized current staff, and on the onset, they were taking calls. I'm not sure if you recall, but the chief of the Gates Police Department had mentioned, well, we had mentioned that during the hearing, that they wanted in-person contact as opposed to that phone call contact. Once we were able to ramp up staffing, we were able to send people out with direct contact with law enforcement using a combination of current staff and newly hired staff. We continue to staff up to make sure that we don't burn out current staff with the 24/7 response.
Thank you. Mr. President. So when did the face meeting with the officers versus the phone meetings with the fit people with officers, when do you think that was phased in from? What approximate date do you have?
Through the President, I would agree with Ms. Wilmot that occurred in February. We can get the exact day out to you.
I would appreciate that. I'll leave the floor back to you, Mr. President.
Legislator Hebert.
All in favor, say aye.
Legislator Hebert.
Oh, I'm sorry, Legislator Hebert. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have a quick request of the administration. It may take a moment to describe would it be possible to get a chart? I'm assuming you have people working on shifts, some sort of shifts, 12-hour shifts, 3 8-hour shifts a day, whatever. Would it be possible to get a list of a chart that looks like that, Sunday through Saturday, day shift, evening shift, night shifts, however you were working it, going back to like September through current, showing us the dates, like say from September 1st to October 15th, this is what our coverage looked like. And then we added some people, I'm making this up, in October 16th, and it went to this, and then January 1st, it went to this other look. Could you do something like that for us, please?
Through the President, sure, we can put that together. And if you like, we also have the charts of what the staffing levels will look like when we're fully staffed up with the new hires.
I would like to see that as well. Thank you very much for offering that, Ms. Crossdale. Appreciate it. And would it be, final question through you, Mr. President, would it be possible to get that sometime next week so we have at least a couple days to look at it before full ledge?
Through the President, sure.
Thank you, ma'am. I yield the floor.
Perfect.
Mr. President, Legislator Boyce.
Go ahead, Legislator Boyce.
Through the President, these positions that are being filled, are we finding it difficult to fill these positions due to the lack of people in the area? Or is it just the nature of the job that people aren't trained to do this job? A sense of what's going on with that?
Through the president, no, actually, we received a significant amount of interest. The delay with hiring is we have to go through the interview process, the job offer process, and then folks have to give notice. And sometimes that's 2 weeks, sometimes it's a month, depending on where they work so that they don't leave a gap with their current employer. So it takes about 90 days to go through the entire process of hiring.
Through the president, can you tell us what is the minimal qualifications for this position and what experience they have to have?
Through the president, I'll start answering that question, then I'll turn it over to Ms. Wilmot. All of our clinicians are master level clinicians. The vast majority are licensed. Those who are not licensed are obtaining their clinical hours so that they can sit for the state licensure exam. I'll turn it over to Ms. Wilmot for any other specifics surrounding qualifications.
Through the president, I would agree with what Deputy Crosstail just reported. Also, they are required to have a minimum of 3 to 5 years of experience providing crisis services.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Next.
Item number 28, referral 21-0156, enact a local law amending the Code of Ethics of the County of Monroe.
Move it, Mr.
Moved by legislator Taylor, seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to second it also.
Who's that?
Legislator Lee.
Legislator Lee? Okay.
Legislator Barnhart.
Legislator Barnhart, you have the floor.
Yes, I just wanted to point out that I'm very much in favor of this legislation because I think one of the benefits is that it provides a path to investigate complaints. Unfortunately, people, members of the public, can't really go to HR if a complaint is about one of us, an elected official. So we need an accountability mechanism here. This legislation also provides transparency about these decisions, and it spells out potential penalties. So I think this is a really good upgrade to our ethics code, which is frankly had been one of the weaker ones among upstate urban counties. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion?
Legislator.
Motion.
Legislator, who's that? Brew?
Hebert.
Legislator Hebert.
Yeah, two quick questions, Mr. President, through you to the administration. Does our current ethics law require us to follow federal and state ethics laws? I believe there's a statement in our ethics law saying that we must do so.
Through you, Mr. President, this is County Attorney John Bringawat. I don't believe there is an explicit statement in our ethics law that we're bound by federal and state ethics law. Certainly, state law would govern certain issues, but no, there is not such a statement in the current law.
I would have sworn I
So
read
if there
that.
isn't such a statement, we're still bound by state law? Is that what you're saying, Counselor?
Through you, or to you, Mr. President, to an extent, for example, in the harassment context, as an employer, we're bound by state law, but this would extend those protections to elected officials, for example, and also potentially to harassment that happens with respect to members of the public.
Through you, Mr. President, to the administration, is it allowable under state and federal law to apply these things to elected officials? I thought that there was some special status there. I may be wrong.
Through you, Mr. President, I'm aware of no legal authority why it would not be allowable.
Through you, Mr. President, would you please research that and give me a written letter to that effect, if that's the case?
Through you, Mr. President, I would be happy to.
Thank you, sir. I yield the floor.
Legislator
President.
Barnhart.
Legislator.
Who is that?
Legislator Felder, Mr. President.
Legislator Felder, you have the floor.
Yeah, I would like to seek out for the legislature to seek outside counsel on this. Because I have a problem with the way it's written and everything. It's vague. It's now I also would like to know if any other jurisdiction in New York State does this or has anything like this in place. But I think this is because of history. I don't trust the legal counsel coming from the law department. I would like for the legislature to seek its own counsel on this legislation.
So is that a motion for us?
Motion is requested.
Motion.
Legislator Felder has the floor, please.
That's not a motion. That's something I believe you have the authority to do. I think we need to seek our own counsel. I think because of it's kind of obvious where this legislation came from, and I don't trust it, and as I said, I don't trust Mr. Brigham's counsel, and so I think we need to we need to get our own attorney to research this, and I think we probably should not even bother taking this issue up tonight.
Legislator Barnhart.
Legislator Barnhart.
Yes. First, thank you. First, I just wanted to address Legislator Hebert's questions about state law and how it interacts with ethics boards. The general municipal law does govern ethics boards and mandates the establishment of ethics board. Monroe County actually does the minimum required. And if you look at other counties, particularly Suffolk County, New York City, you'll see far more robust ethics infrastructure than we have here. This, I believe, is a first step to making our ethics code much stronger, and it still honestly would not be in line with some of the other codes that we see in other places. And I just wanted to address Legislator Felder. I think it's a good idea to have outside counsel review this type of thing, and I think they're going to find that these kinds of changes are appropriate and within the law. What we can't do, back to Legislator Hebert's point, what we can't do is perhaps impose penalties that wouldn't be allowed by state law. I mean, we have to follow public officers law for that. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Mr. President.
Legislator Lamar.
Mr. President.
Legislator Lamar, you have the floor. Legislator Lamar.
I motion to table this.
Lamar, can I get my question in first? Because I've been waiting to try to get in.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay.
Legislator
Are
Lee.
you okay with Legislator
I
Lamar?
yield the floor. Yes, that's fine.
We'll go to Legislator Lee, then we'll come back to you, Legislator Lamar. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to withdraw my second when I spoke out of turn.
Okay, thank you.
Noted.
Noted. Legislator Lamar. Legislator Lamar has the floor next.
I motion to table this.
Do you have a second to table?
Yes, now second.
Second.
Legislator Lee.
Legislator Lee seconds the motion to table. No discussion on a tabling motion. I think we should go to a roll call vote. I believe we need 2/3. Is that correct? No. Roll call vote. Yes upholds the tabling motion.
Mr. Brew.
Yes.
Mr. Felder.
Yes.
Votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Yes.
Votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. Mr. Ansello.
Yes.
Mr. Ansello votes yes. Ms. Barnhart.
I worry this will never come up again, so no.
Ms. Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroth is excused. Mr. Baines.
No.
Mr. Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce.
Yes.
Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby.
Yes.
Mr. Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty.
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio.
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer.
Yes.
Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Ms. Hasman.
No.
Ms. Hasman votes no. Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Mr. Keough-Lassie.
Yes.
Mr. Keough-Lassie votes yes. Ms. Lamar.
Yes.
Ms. Lamar votes yes. Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Lee votes yes. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Mafucci.
Mr. Mafucci?
No.
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 Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marinetti.
Yes.
Mr. Marinetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli.
No.
Mr. Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman.
No.
Ms. Roman votes no. Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Ms. Taylor votes yes. Mr. Turp.
Yes.
Mr. Turp votes yes. Mr. Wilcox.
No.
Mr. Wilcox votes no. Mr. Wilt.
Yes.
Mr. Wilt votes yes. Mr. Udelson.
No.
Mr. Udelson votes no. President Carbone.
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. Motion to table is sustained, 20-8.
Next item, 29.
Item number 29, referral 21-0163, authorize a contract with Tribe Ecotherapy for the provisions of a pilot mental health program as a holistic option for veterans struggling with mental illness for the Monroe County Department of Veteran Services.
Move it, Mr. President. Second.
Moved by legislator Al Copper,
Second.
seconded by legislator Delahanty. Is there any discussion?
Second,
Second, who
Hebert.
was that second?
Legislator Mafucci.
Okay, sorry, legislator Mafucci, seconded by legislator Mafucci.
And legislator Hebert.
And legislator Hebert. Anyone else? Is there any discussion?
Yes,
Seeing none,
Mr. President.
What? Who's that?
Boyce. Legislator
Legislator Boyce, you have the floor. Sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to, I see that the Tribe Ecotherapy LLC was the only responder. Just wanted to know if this was a specialized type of therapy, that, that's why we only would get one responder?
Mr. President, I believe Nick Stefanovic is available to answer that.
Yes, through you, Mr. President. This is Nick from Veteran Services. That is correct. It is a specialized type of treatment that has been studied and is now being offered in a few other parts of the country, but has not yet come into our area.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just comment, I explained my vote. I would like to thank the administration and the Veterans Service Agency for expediting this. I know that these services are in high demand, and we have a high need for them with our local veterans. And the program is best run when the weather's good, and it's starting to get good. So I'm glad that we're going to be able to get this up and running in time. It was a major concern of mine when I sponsored this back in January. So thank you for moving forward, and I certainly will be voting yes. I yield the floor.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Item carries. Are there any other matters to come before the Committee of the Whole?
Legislator Hebert.
Legislator Hebert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to ask the administration a question on the EPPI 2 program. We received a written response from Mr. McCann to a letter saying that it would be a little bit of time before we were able to get reporting stats on the location of where the money was being expended. We're now almost a full month into the program, since program announcement of April 1st, and I thank you for giving us the report on the EPPI 1 programs distributions throughout the county. Can you please tell me when you would be able to get us similar information for EPPI 2? I think you're supposed to give it to us. I can't remember. I think it was bi-monthly, something like that.
Mr. President, I anticipate that we'll have that letter ready tomorrow.
Thank you. And one other question through you, Mr. President, of the administration. I didn't see the press conference live, but TV stations and I believe the DNC reported that there was $30 million of funding for EPPI 2. I know that we accepted a total of about 21 million, 6 million from the city, 15-ish from the county last month. Where did the other $9+ million come from?
Through the president, it's anticipated that future funding through the Recovery Act money will come to the city of Rochester and County of Monroe.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Could you please repeat that?
Yes, sure. Through the president, it's anticipated that future funding will be coming to the city of Rochester and County of Monroe.
Can you identify from what through you, Mr. President?
Through the president, we anticipate it'll be federal dollars.
Is this, through you, Mr. President, is this ARP money? Is this something else that we don't know about?
Through the president, we're anticipating it'll be additional ERAP money, emergency rental assistance money.
Through you, Mr. President, do we have an indication that we're getting 9 million, or is that just a guess, or how do we arrive at that? I mean, it seems a very specific number. I'm just curious how we found out about it, I guess.
Through the president, these were through conversations with our partners in the city of Rochester.
Through you, Mr. President, so we don't have an actual source for the extra $9 million. We just told people we did. I mean, I'm confused, I guess.
Through you, Mr. President, no, I believe Deputy County Executive Crosdale explained this is money that we anticipate. These were part of a conversation that we had with our partners in the city. If there is a need for funding, we anticipate there being additional federal dollars available. If that funding does not materialize, we would have access to other dollars that we would be able to put into the program. So $30 million is an accurate number and one that we stand by that will be available if it is needed.
Understood. I yield the floor, Mr. President.
Point of clarification, Mr. President. Legislator Baines.
Go ahead, Legislator Baines.
Is the other matters section of the agenda an open forum for questions to be asked that are on the minds of all legislators?
I think this question pertains to the matters at hand. I'll allow his questioning. Do you have any questions, Legislator Baines?
Oh, no, I don't have any issues with Mr. Hebert's questioning, but I'm just curious as to what the parameters are for this section in the agenda.
Yeah, we've allowed that kind of questioning before.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Legislator Hebert.
Go ahead, Legislator Hebert.
Mr. Baines may not be aware. I just wanted to make sure he is that we had written. I was a co-signer on a letter asking several questions to the administration, and the response was that we would be getting it soon. We received that quite some time ago, and that's why I felt it was appropriate to ask tonight in a legislative session rather than wait for written correspondence. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. It's usually under the discretion of the chair of the committee, but is there any other Matters to come before the committee of the whole? Hearing none, the committee of the whole stands adjourned and shall rise and report in the same matter as the legislative standing committees. The April 27th, 2021 special meeting of the legislature is reconvened. Matters of urgency. Clerk.
Item number 30, referral 21-0164.LL, enacting a local law entitled Operation of Off-Road Vehicles on Public Highways in Monroe County.
Moved by legislator Felder, seconded by legislator Flagler.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second
For introductory purposes only. Next item. Who else seconded that?
Legislator Flagler Mitchell.
Okay, that's what I've got.
Item number 31, referral 21-0164.LL, providing that local law intro number of 2021 entitled Operation of Off-Road Vehicles on Public Highways in Monroe County be tabled.
Move it.
Moved by legislator Felder, seconded by legislator Flagler Mitchell. This is a motion to table. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
Who was that? Do we need a roll call vote, or is there just one no? Legislator Baines is no. Is that correct, Legislator Baines?
Thank you, Mr. President. That's correct.
You're welcome.
Got it.
Okay, next, 32.
Item number 32, referral 21-0164.LL, fixing a public hearing on local law intro number of 2021 entitled Operation of Off-Road Vehicles on Public Highways in Monroe County.
Move it, Mr. President.
Second it.
Moved by legislator Felder, seconded by legislator Flagler Mitchell. This is to set the public hearing. Is there any discussion on the public hearing?
Yes, Mr. President.
Is that legislator Felder?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to say a few words about the need for this legislation.
Not appropriate.
Yeah, I think legislator Felder, we're just discussing setting the public hearing.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Legislator Roman.
Legislator Roman.
Though I understand that this is about setting the public hearing for this particular piece of legislation, I do have questions pertaining to some of the language in the piece of legislation. Unfortunately,
yeah, but I thought I made that clear, Legislator Roman. We're not discussing that. We're just discussing the public hearing.
So we're going to allow poorly written typos to be in legislation?
What typos do you have?
Oh, a lot. And actually the language makes it so that it's confusing to understand.
Well, we're not discussing the language. We're discussing the public hearing. Is there any discussion on the public hearing?
Legislator Morelli.
Legislator Morelli, you have the floor.
Mr. President, I just want to explain my vote. I will be voting in the affirmative. First and foremost, I just want to thank.
Yeah, but Legislator Morelli, we don't have to explain our vote at this point in time.
President Cabral, I'd like to explain my vote, and there's nothing that says I can't explain my vote. You give certainly other people an opportunity to explain their vote. I'd like to explain my vote.
Who else did I give the opportunity when we were discussing the public hearing?
Let everybody explain their vote. So I'm going to go ahead and explain my vote. First of all, I want to thank Legislator Dondorfer for his work and working across the aisle to try and bring this legislation that Legislator Roman and Majority Leader Roman and I introduced last week.
Mr. President, point of order.
Has nothing to do
Point
with
of order, Mr. President.
public hearing.
Okay, a little decorum, please. A little decorum. A little decorum, please. Legislator Morelli, please, a little decorum.
Sure.
Try to control yourself. Legislator Colby, did you call a point of order?
Yes, I did, sir. His explaining the vote is out of order because he's talking about legislation, not talking relative to the motion he had, which is tabling or setting a public hearing. His comments goes beyond that. So I say the rule of order, and I call the question.
I'll uphold that point of order. I'll uphold that point of order.
But I'm going to suggest next time, Legislator Felder and Legislator Flagler
Could you
Mitchell.
please turn Legislator
I call the
Morelli's
question.
microphone off?
I second it.
Legislator Morelli, a little
I second it.
decorum. There was a point of order. Do you want to follow the rules? Or do
Let's
the
say,
rules don't apply
I call
to
the
you, Legislator
question.
Morelli?
They don't make
Do
mistakes.
the rules
I
apply
second
to
it.
you,
Legislator calls
Legislator
the
Morelli?
question. I have a second on the
I
floor,
got a second.
which cuts off the debate.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote on calling the question. Legislator Morelli, I believe we're going to turn your microphone off. You have no,
Mr. President,
you're not following the rules.
You've been trying to mute me since I got here, so I'm certainly well aware
I
of it.
think a lot of people have tried to mute you, but we haven't had a lot of.
I call it my question, my floor.
Question
I
order.
have the
You're
floor.
welcome to continue.
This is to call the question.
Donald
This is to
Trump.
call the question,
Have a
roll
second.
call vote.
Certainly welcome.
Mr. Brew.
Let's start the vote.
Yes.
Mr. Brew.
Yes.
Mr. Brew votes yes. Mr. Felder.
Yes.
Mr. Felder votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer.
Yes.
Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. Mr. Ansello.
Yes.
Mr. Ansello votes yes. Ms. Barnhart.
Without being able to explain my vote, I'm a no.
Ms. Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroff is excused. Mr. Baines.
No.
Mr. Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce.
Yes.
Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby.
Yes.
Mr. Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty.
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio.
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer.
Just for clarification, this is for the public hearing, correct?
Call the question.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Ms. Hasman.
No.
Ms. Hasman votes no. Mr. Hebert.
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Mr. Keofatlassi.
Yes.
Mr. Keofatlassi votes yes. Ms. Lamar.
Yes.
Ms. Lamar votes yes. Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Mafucci. Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marinetti.
Yes.
Mr. Marinetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli.
No.
Mr. Morelli votes no. Ms. Roman.
Mr. President, I've heard multiple responses as to what we're voting on right now. Can you please, just you, not anyone else, clarify what we're voting on right now?
Why can't anyone else answer the question? Why does it have to be me?
Because other people have said different things when you're talking to answer
Mr.
the
Clerk, could
question.
you answer the question for her, please?
We're voting on the motion to call the question. Yes or no?
No.
Ms. Roman votes no. Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor.
Yes.
Ms. Taylor votes yes. Mr. Turp.
Yes.
Mr. Turp votes yes. Mr. Wilcox.
No.
Mr. Wilcox votes no. Mr. Wilt.
Yes.
Mr. Wilt votes yes. Mr. Udelson.
No.
Mr. Udelson votes no. President Carbone.
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. The call to question passes 20-8.
So now we vote on setting the public hearing. Let's go to a roll call vote. Yes sets the public hearing.
Mr. Brew.
Yes.
Mr. Brew votes yes. Mr. Felder.
Yes.
Mr. Felder votes yes. Mr. Flagler Mitchell.
Yes.
Mr. Flagler Mitchell votes yes. Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Alcoffer. Mr. Ansello.
Yes.
Mr. Ansello votes yes. Ms. Barnhart.
No.
Ms. Barnhart votes no. Mr. Baroff is excused. Mr. Baines.
No.
Mr. Baines votes no. Ms. Boyce.
Now, let me understand, this is for the public hearing so that the public can comment on this? That would be
This is to
yes.
set the public hearing.
Yes, that would be yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Boyce votes yes. Mr. Colby?
Yes.
Mr. Colby votes yes. Mr. Delahanty?
Yes.
Mr. Delahanty votes yes. Mrs. DeFlorio?
Yes.
Mrs. DeFlorio votes yes. Mr. Dondorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Dondorfer votes yes. Ms. Hasman?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Ms. Hasman votes yes. Mr. Hebert?
Yes.
Mr. Hebert votes yes. Mr. Keough-Lassie?
Yes.
Mr. Keough-Lassie votes yes. Ms. Lamar?
Yes.
Ms. Lamar votes yes. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Lee votes yes. Mr. Mafucci?
No.
Mr. Mafucci votes no. Mr. Marinetti?
Yes.
Mr. Marinetti votes yes. Mr. Morelli? Mr. Morelli?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Roman?
Yes, I will vote yes on a hearing for legislation originally proposed by Legislator Morelli and I. Absolutely.
Ms. Roman votes yes. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Smith votes yes. Ms. Taylor?
Yes.
Ms. Taylor votes yes. Mr. Terp?
Yes.
Mr. Terp votes yes. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox votes yes. Mr. Wilt?
Yes.
Mr. Wilt votes yes. Mr. Udelson?
Yes.
Mr. Udelson votes yes. President Carbone?
Yes.
President Carbone votes yes. And Mr. Alcoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Alcoffer votes yes. 25-3, setting the public hearing passes.
I think it's unfortunate some legislators don't want the public to chime in on this, but there being no unfinished business, Legislator Brew?
Yes, Mr. President, this this meeting stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Monroe County Legislature is scheduled for Tuesday, May 11th, 2021 at 6 p.m.
Thank you.